Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and I'm back with another review. And today I'm taking a look at from the Transformers Legacy line. This is Wave 3 Deluxe Class Skullgrin. Skullgrin is a update to the classic Pretender. Um, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about this figure. First off, the way it's packaged in robot mode, I think ends up damaging the figure quite a bit. And that's simply because of the new packaging style that Hasbro has decided to adopt. Also, I think the instructions really do no favors for this figure and would make it very difficult for younger hands to handle. That's all stuff we'll get to in robot mode. We're starting off in its faux hover tank mode. It's a hover tank. It's a regular tank. There's only treads on the back, so maybe it flies. But it is very nice. Now, this top turret section is all completely removable, and you'll have to do that to get the figure out of the packaging. But also the individual gun barrels are removable and can be handheld. Again, we'll take a look at that in robot mode and different options you have. It does have its signature blade guns, and what I do appreciate is Hasbro did include handles with a little bit of a hand guard there, so you can hold them as swords. That is kind of cool. The vehicle mode is nice, and how it comes together is kind of ingenious, but it's getting there. That's part of the problem. So really, I mean, that's about it for the vehicle mode. I mean, it is what it is. You do see a little bit of the robot mode head there. So how about we pause and get into the transformation? All right, gave us a little bit more room. Now, the first step, believe it or not, if you notice, I didn't remove the weapons, and that's because the weapons really are integrated into vehicle mode. If you go ahead and remove them, you'll notice that there's a little notch here, right where my finger is at the tip of what would be the gun barrel. That will sit into a little tab here on the side of what will be the robot mode leg. So when you peg it in, now of course you can peg this in anywhere, but it's really designed to go into this first port here so that tab can sit. Also, as you've heard correctly, I guess because these are a blade and they're edged, due to safety concerns, the entire weapon is a soft rubbery plastic that can come warped somewhat out of packaging. That is what it is. So go ahead and remove that. For ease of transformation, you're going to want to leave the cannon barrels somewhat elevated. And I toyed around with going from robot to vehicle, but I think the few points that need to be shown, I can point out here, not necessarily better, but the same. So the first thing you want to do is turn the vehicle mode over and attach the treads here from the rear. They peg in here at the upper thigh, but also here at the forearm. So what you want to do is once you get them up, rotate them so the treads are facing towards you. Next, what you want to do is begin to telescope the legs up. So you'll flip them forward. There are actually slots here on the inside of the thighs that have corresponding tabs right where my thumbs are. And just pull that up all the way. And what you want to do to make life a little bit easier is get your thumbs in back there, push up on the hinge so that it will come all the way up, square, and then you'll friction that into place. It'll peg snap into place, and then what you can do is bend the knees forward and they'll tab into those sections there. Separate the legs. Bring this section down. Just bring it down slightly. Fold the feet out before you do anything else. And what you want to do now is there's a tab there on the inside of the tread that will go into a slot there. Peg that down. And then just there's another little tab right there where my finger is, and there's a slot right there that will cover that. So believe it or not, I mean, you may not think these treads fit in well, but they do, and when they're done, they fill in the legs quite nicely. So there is that. And you do still have your knee articulation, and I like how there's a little bit of that covering there. Now what you want to do is from the hip joint, bring the legs down. And you'll know you're doing this right when you see the skull belt buckle cod piece. And once you have that done, bring the whole waist section up. That will snap into place, or quietly friction. And yes, you do have waist articulation, and you do have the legs done. Coming around to the back, now I want to caution you when dealing with the arms, be careful. I've already heard stories of a breakage already. You want to first lift up this whole section. It pegs into a white tab section. I'll show you as soon as I fold the arms out. Separate and then fold them out. There's the tabs right there. There are the slots in the upper forearm. It's basically where the mushroom peg comes in. Next, what you want to do is, using your two fingers, put one on each tab and pull down on that track section, bringing the what will bring the shoulders up into place. Now this is where things get a little tricky. Open up this panel here. This is the chest section of the robot mode, and we're going to flip this whole panel around, getting the head into out. So be careful. Just take your time. Actually, that worked much better than I thought. That will peg into place. Now, here is where I feel the instructions fail. First of all, there's a problem with getting when the figure comes in the package. And that problem is that the two horns here on the side of the head are rubber banded, clear banded together, putting a great deal of excess pressure on them, causing the rubber to warp and basically come off of the pegs on the side of the head. Now, basically what I did is I just lifted the head up and squeezed down on the pegs for a few seconds to get them to shift back into place, and I haven't had any problems. The second issue is that the instructions do not show you that the horns here in the back have to be flipped down for transformation. If you do not do that, number one, it's harder to get the head through the hole. And number two, there is no way to close up the panel here once in vehicle mode if you don't. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, once you have the head out, make sure it's flipped up. They do show you that to flip the head up when going into vehicle mode, but it's actually a little bit easier to tuck it through when it's down, and it will come down naturally. But you need it up for the clearance to close that chest panel. So now on mine, there's unfortunately some sort of oh great, that's coming off. Some sort of friction in the ball joint that causes the head to sit a little off center on occasion. Like right now, it's a little bit off center. If you play with it, you can get it, but again, you run the risk of damaging things. And just to point out, it's as I carefully lift the arm, that section right there is what broke on somebody that I saw on an Amazon thread on TFW. So just be careful. While we're here, go ahead and flip out the hands. You'll rotate at the bicep forward. That will give you access to the elbow joint and have the arms in the proper position. It's interesting, you do have a little bit of play here with the elbow joints. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I think, yes, it is, because that's an open joint. There's no, it's solid there, plastic underneath. And there you have Skullgrin in its robot mode. Now, as I've done this transformation a few times, I've kind of gotten to feel a little bit more okay with the figure. But that first time, especially with the horns here popping off, the panel not closing because I didn't realize I had to fold that down, it was a little annoying. But there is a lot of fun you can have now in robot mode. As I mentioned, you have its sword guns, can be held as swords, as a gun, can be held as a sword. Can also be held using a peg here on the forearm, a slot on the forearm, as a tunfa, which I think is really cool. There is no wrist articulation, so that's a little limiting. But wait, there's more. As I mentioned before, and fold down this tail section here. These cannons are removable, and you can switch the blades for the cannons. You can also, of course, store the blades on the cannons for weapon mode. But you can bring the guns around, put them on the shoulders. You can alternate, put the sword up here. Look at that. You got a little side, helicopter action. The figure can then hold the gun as a rifle. I think some of that is close to what the original toy was like. I didn't have Skullgrin as a kid, so I don't know. And man, that head is really bothering me, and I'm very hesitant to try and pop it off the joint just to see what's going on. But you do have that plate there. For me, I think I'll just leave these on the back, on the backpack, occasionally maybe using them as a handgun. But it is nice to know you have options with the weaponry. It would also be nice if there was a way to, let's see. Maybe. There's a hole here in the tail, so if I do that, if I use the hole there, I can then... You can kind of bring the guns over. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. So you do have that option there. And by the way, when you take the figure out of the package, that tail is folded up, so make sure you fold it down before you start. So, yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about Skullgrin. And I think I'll share them with my final thoughts. A lot of people like Skullgrin and have a fond memory of the Pretender. And in fact, I just noticed if you look now, having zoomed in, you can see the warping here I was talking about with the horn. And that's really where my issue lies with the figure. The transformation is okay, but the poor instructions that can actually lead you to break the figure, as well as how the figure's packaged, makes it very hard for me to recommend this figure. This is definitely not for smaller hands, just because I don't think they'll have the dexterity to avoid knocking these horns off, fixing them, and then they can get lost. And then you have a very odd looking figure. And I mean, really, my big issue is just how it was packaged. If Skullgrin was packaged in a normal window box, in a proper tray, plastic insert tray, I don't think we would have needed those rubber bands to protect the horns from being stolen. Maybe they're there just to hold them in place, but by using that rubber band, that clear piece, as I mentioned again, it put an undue stress on the horns and has warped the peg. Now, you can also try using a blow dryer or a heat gun, but on a section so small, you run the risk of actually damaging the plastic rather than fixing it. It's for all those reasons why I can only recommend Skullgrin to an adult, a pair of adult hands that can properly handle this figure, and really only then someone who's a die-hard fan of Skullgrin. If that's not you, I don't recommend this figure at all, because there's just too many possible things that can go wrong, and I'm only expecting to hear more reports of breakage. So there's that. That's about it for the review. If you like this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. While I will always appreciate the views, the likes, comments, and subscriptions help to communicate to YouTube through their algorithms that my channel should be exalted and held upon high. If you want to make the ultimate sign of support, I do have a Patreon. It is www.patreon.com/chuckdog1999. All I ask for is $1 a month or $12 a year. No thrills, no tiers, no special rewards. All you're doing is helping me help you, help me to help you bring figures like Skullgrin to you, as well as keeping up the infrastructure of this channel. I know it is the holiday season. I know we're in the middle of a bit of a recession, and there's inflation and a whole bunch of other things. So please don't worry about me. If you don't have the spare cash to share, especially as we get closer to the holidays, I completely understand. Your views are more than thanks enough. Patreon is just a cherry on top of an already generous Sunday. So with that being said, this is your old pal Chuck for Skullgrin. We will see you next time.